Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the first webinar of our 2022 series. We're glad you could join us this evening. My name is Brian Harper, and I'm the Director of Communications here at DAN. As with all of our webinars, we'll be doing a Q&A session at the end of this one, so please post your questions in the chat. Note that if you're watching this on the events page of dan.org, you won't be able to post questions. So just mouse over the embedded video player. The name of the presentation will appear at the top of the player. Click that, you can go straight to Dan's YouTube page and post questions at there. Tonight, it is my pleasure to introduce Jim Gunderson. Jim is the Director of Training at DAN and a member of DAN's Safety Services. Jim's diving career began in 1986 in his hometown of Casper, Wyoming. He holds degrees in marine science from the University of Hawaii at Hilo and in psychology from the University of Wyoming. He holds scuba certifications from PADI and NAUI and has an inactive AAUS rating. Jim is a NAUI course director trainer and a DAN examiner. Tonight he will be presenting DAN training program.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you. Yes, welcome to everybody that's attending tonight. We appreciate you taking some time out of your evening and joining us. So thank you, and let's get into what we're going to be covering here. So we're going to be talking about, we're going to do some introductions of the Safety Services team, where we were with our first aid training programs, where we're going with version 3.0, and we're going to talk about the practicality and profitability of DAN courses for those of you that are considering being an instructor or even upgrading into an instructor trainer, how you can take a course, and of course how to become a DAN instructor. And we'll talk about the bridging modules. We'll get to all this as we go through the evening. I want to start with some introductions of the Safety Services team. Safety Services encompasses a number of aspects, including training. And it's headed by our Vice President of Safety Services, Francois Berman. He is a professional engineer by training and is an absolute world expert in hyperbaric chambers. Myself, as the Director of Training, I also help with the development of other education programs here at DAN. And we have on our support lines, we have got Todd Yarborough, who's an instructor trainer with us. He also runs a dive shop down in Florida. We have Christine Tambouri. She is here at DAN headquarters. She was originally an intern with us last summer, and we liked the work that she was doing, so we decided to bring her on in a full-time capacity. And in January of this year, we added Wally Endress. Wally comes to us originally he's from Vermont. He's also a dive instructor, a first aid instructor with DAN, and comes with another wide variety of expertise, especially when it comes to various safety things. So he's been a great addition to the team. We also have Ray, who is our warehouse manager. So he's responsible for all our inventory controls, what you see in the store at dan.org, and managing the warehouse. And Roland, he's the shipping clerk. So all the orders that you folks place through the DAN store, Roland is the one that he pulls those orders, processes them, gets them out the door for you. These guys are fantastic to work with and really the backbone of our warehouse team. So part of DAN Safety Services is the e-learning modules, and it's not limited to just training. We've got hazard identification risk assessment, or HIRA, levels 1 and 2 for dive professionals and dive businesses. We also have e-learnings on emergency action planning, and we have e-learning on environmental stewardship as well, both for dive professionals and for businesses. So this is a great opportunity to get into our e-learning platform, and these courses are absolutely 100% free for you. So if you go to dan.diverelearning.com, you can either log in, or if you don't already have an account, you can register for an account. It's free, and you can start taking those courses absolutely free. Of course, the training programs, which are going to get into much more detail here in just a moment. We're also responsible for the recompression chamber network. So we work with our medical staff, and so we know what chambers are open, when they're going down, when they're having scheduled maintenance, those types of things, and we help support these chambers, and they help support us in the treatment of divers and diving maladies. We're also, of course, responsible for product sales. That's where especially Ray and Roland come in as part of this team. We have a DSO course, or Dive Safety Officer course, which focuses on the occupational safety and health aspects of dive safety. And this is for basically everything up to when you get in the water and when you come out of the water. We leave the other DSA programs for universities or other academic institutions to start training those dive safety officers. But we focus on the occupational side. Of course, we have the Oxygen Grant Program. We have a grant program which you can find on our website at dan.org. And this is where you can get a matching grant or a full grant for oxygen kits. And there are certain criteria that meet for matching grants and more strict criteria for a full grant. So we encourage you to check that out at dan.org. And of course, we've got the website page at dan.org with loads and loads of resources, from health and safety tips to dive operations tips to dive safety tips to, of course, all the information on the various e-learning courses that we offer. All right, so we're going to focus on training. So let's continue on here. So some history. DAN's courses started with the emergency oxygen course back in the mid-90s. But we're currently in a transition from version 2.1, and we've been under version 2.1 for about the last 3, 4, 5 years. And they included courses in basic life support, which was one rescuer, adult-only CPR, and some first aid. Of course, our flagship of emergency oxygen for scuba diving injuries, which covers how you administer oxygen to divers that are being affected by symptoms of decompression illness. We've got the neurological assessment and first aid for hazardous marine life injuries, or HMLI. Then we took the diving-centric parts of these courses and we wrapped them up into a course called DEMP, or Diving Emergency Management Provider. So it was one course that hit all the diving-related aspects of these 4 courses. We wrapped them into one course. We also have a healthcare provider for CPR course. This covers 1 and 2 rescuer, adult, child, and infant CPR. And as we scale back the first aid skills just a little bit. But then we take all those courses, wrap them up into what we call Diving First Aid for Professional Divers, or DFA Pro. So that's where we were, and we're phasing out of these courses. We're going into version 3.0. So we, of course, have a BLS course. We're going to talk about some details of this here in just a little bit. We, of course, have the Emergency Oxygen course, and we have the DFA Pro course. These are our 3 main courses that we are focusing on with version 3.0. And DFA Pro includes all the BLS material, all of the E02 material, as well as the first aid for hazardous marine life injuries and the HMLI tables, or the neurological skills. So with our BLS course, what we did is we took our old BLS course and our old HCP course, and we actually kind of merged them together. So we have a very robust course which covers first aid, CPR, AEDs, and foreign body airway obstruction. And section 1 is all the CPR skills, automatic external defibrillators, and foreign body airway obstruction. We call it FBAO for short. We have 1 and 2 rescuer CPR for adults, children, and infants, bag valve masks, use of automatic external defibrillators, or AEDs, they're commonly known. We deal with foreign body airway obstructions. We actually teach 3 different techniques: abdominal thrust, chest thrust, and back blows. And section 2 is divided into all the first aid skills. So we've got things with how to deal with bleeding management, including direct pressure, wound packing, and use of tourniquets. How to deal with splinting for suspected fractures, dislocations, and strains and sprains. We've got special considerations for very particular types of injuries, like dental injuries or eye injuries, or some more traumatic injuries like an open chest wound or suspected spinal injuries. Those are all covered in the special considerations. We, of course, cover burns and temperature-related injuries. And, of course, we've got to have some medical emergencies we know how to deal with, such as how to deal with a diabetic emergency, suspected heart attacks, those types of things, as well as dealing with a potential stroke. Again, DAN's flagship is the Emergency Oxygen for Scuba Diving Injuries, or E02 course. That's been our stalwart for several years now. And it gives us a good overview of what atmospheric gases are out there, how they work in the body, So we get into the anatomy and physiology of the respiration and circulation systems. We also talk about decompression illness and what those signs and symptoms are. And we start working on how oxygen actually helps divers as a first aid measure for dealing with oxygen and how to handle that safely and deliver that oxygen using a number of techniques such as a non-rebreather mask, a demand valve, a bag valve mask, or a manually triggered ventilator. All these are techniques covered by the E02 course. Diving first aid for professional divers, as I mentioned earlier, covers all the content from BLS, all of the content from E02. We also wrap in some of the neurological assessment skills, such as how to take proper vital signs, how to do assessments on mental function, cranial nerves, motor function, coordination and balance. And these all go towards helping someone realize that they might need some additional treatment, because a lot of people that are experiencing symptoms of DCS might be in denial that something is wrong, but you as a responder can see that there's something wrong, and running these assessments could actually help you give the treatment to that person. We also cover first aid for hazardous marine life injuries. This includes stings, fine envenomations, and contact injuries, and pressure immobilization techniques. And these are all specific to very specific types of injuries that you can get from hazardous marine life, such as jellyfish stings, sea urchin spines, contact injuries with, say, fire coral, or if you happen to get an unfortunate encounter with, say, a cone snail. So these techniques are taught as part of this course. And we cover components on bloodborne pathogens, as well as zoonosis and contaminated water. So with version 3.0, we wanted to upgrade and do some things. And so the question is, what else is new? So we've updated some videos within our courses. We shot new videos to incorporate the new skills that we were incorporating into our programs. We'll get into that here in just a moment, as well as updated to meet the current recommendations and guidelines from an organization called ILCOR. We've got updated teaching slates. There's two examples of those on your screen on the left. One you see is the emergency oxygen slate, and then the CPR, AED, and FBAO slate. We've updated these so our instructors and our students have these right at their fingertips for actually learning these skills, and then can use these slates for actual treatment in the field. We've got updated materials with all new graphics, images, revised texts. So why did we do all of this? About every 5 years, there's an organization called ILCOR, which is the International Liaison Council on Resuscitation. And what they do is they take all sorts of guidelines from American Heart Association, the European Resuscitation Council, the Australia New Zealand Council on Resuscitation, as well as doctors, other scientists, EMS personnel, and all these studies that are run, and they look at all these guidelines and recommendations, and they put out a blanket guideline for courses and providers, everywhere from lay providers that get trained in first aid once every couple of years, all the way through hospital staff working in emergency rooms and in ICU units. So about every 5 years, they put out a major revision. Then every year they have supplementals that go along. So when 2020 rolled down and the ILCOR guidelines came out, we found some things that we needed to adjust and we wanted to add to and clarify. So we came out with version 3.0. We, of course, have a new design, which includes, we've also added some new knowledge and skills, which brings me to our comparison study. So when we looked at this, we wanted to look at all the various courses, first aid courses within the scuba industry. And we did some course comparisons. We looked at DAN's DFA Pro version 2.1 to other courses within the industry. And across all of these courses, we identified 74 individual skills or knowledge areas across all the different courses. And version 2.1 had 64 of those 74 skills, which I thought was pretty good. But especially considering other industry courses, they have ranges from 39 of those 74 skills to 49 of those 70 skills. So with version 3.0, we were able to upgrade and add some of these skills that we thought would be great additions to our course, and we covered now 71 of those 74 identified skills. the three courses, or the three skills that we left out were use of a nasal cannula for delivery of oxygen for scuba diving injuries. And the reason we left that out is the nasal cannula does not give a high enough concentration, especially compared to non-rebreather masks or MTVs or demand valves. So we opted not to have the nasal cannula. Also, one of the skills that was identified was using oxygen outside of a diving or a submersion event. And while this is sometimes a valid concern and valid use of oxygen, there are some medical conditions that supplemental oxygen is actually contraindicated. So rather than further expanding our course far outside the diving industry, we decided to just keep our oxygen course and our DFA Pro course, the oxygen delivery part, to these diving and submersion event skills only. And then the last one was pressure points or indirect pressure. That hasn't been in standards for almost 10 years now, actually over 10 years now, but we found that in one of the courses. So we obviously didn't put that in because that's no longer in standards. So this is where I want to talk specifically to those that are considering becoming a DAN instructor, okay? Especially if you're an instructor with another agency. In these cost comparisons, DFA Pro, for the student materials and the credential cost, is about $64. Consider that against your overhead for running other courses. You can see the profitability of this. Not only do we have the most robust and complete course in the industry, we've also got the least expensive overhead to run. So you can see the profitability there. So this is absolutely great for those of you who are looking to become an instructor or even an instructor trainer, especially if you're teaching exclusively with another agency. You can see this is a much better profit margin. So how does one take a first aid course? So, excuse me, hit the wrong button. So you go to dan.org and you can hover over the education events bar on the website. You'll select find a DAN instructor. And if you want, you can take a screenshot or you can capture this with your phone. And this was the link to our locate an instructor page on the website. And you can search by zip code and up to a search radius of 200 miles. So you can find that instructor that might be near, maybe even your next door neighbor, within about 200 miles. And you can reach out to them by clicking on their name. That gives you their contact information. And you can reach out to them and, hey, I'd like to take one of your courses, and away you go. So this is just a screen grab of one of those locators in the Orlando, Florida area. And you can see a number of names. So like I said, each one of those names is hyperlinked. So you can click on a name like Matthew or Garrett or Kathleen, and that will open up a little dialog box which gives you the icons and the descriptions of which courses they can take or which they can teach. And some of them have another little icon next to them. And so this icon right here is the icon for our instructor trainers. These are the people that can actually train people to be instructors. So in this case, Kathleen Schultz has had additional training on how to train trainers. And this icon, and I apologize for the pixelization. These are fairly small icons, and when I blow them up, they get pixelated. But these icons are for our examiners, and our examiners are the ones that can train trainers. And regardless whether you want to take a course from an examiner, a trainer, or an instructor, you're going to reach out to them. You'll get things set up. They will send you an invitation to the e-learning courses. Then you'll sit down at your own time. You'll complete the e-learning before you get with them for the hands-on section. And then you're going to take the time. You could be working with your instructor and your classmates and actually getting hands-on training and practice with these various skills for each of the courses. The hands-on training is absolutely critical. Research studies have shown that just e-learning, you don't develop that skill and that muscle memory. So we want people to have the hands-on training with all of these skills. And it's just that simple. You're going to use that locator to find the instructor, reach out to them, do the e-learning, complete the hands-on section. So how do you become a DAN instructor? This is also relatively straightforward. You have to be a DAN member and a DAN professional, which means you have to be an assistant instructor, dive master, or an instructor within your particular scuba training agency. That said, we do have some provisions for if you're, say, an instructor with American Heart Association and also want to be, but you're not yet a dive master or an instructor for scuba, you can call us. We'll look at your credentials. We'll have a little discussion. Then we will, in all likelihood, write you that waiver of that particular prerequisite. So, but you got to be a DAN member. You've got to be an active diving leader, which we already talked about. Then we're going to find an instructor trainer, just like we did with the icon or with the locator to find an instructor. And this QR code is some information on becoming a DAN instructor. Everything I'm talking about here is found on the website at this link right here. And then you'll complete the required e-learning for this as well. And then you're going to do the in-person instructor qualification course, where you're getting your skills to a demonstration quality, and you learn how to teach these courses using the DAN methodology that, again, are backed by research and science and how people best learn these particular skills. And you get repetitive, you don't get exposure to a skill just once, you get it multiple times throughout your course. So really driving home that way to learn with the hands-on, the kinesthetic learning that people really, really excel at. So that's how to become a DAN instructor. Now, for some of you that may have certifications from another agency, we are going to have a bridging module here. You have to have a current certification in your agency's first aid course from a scuba training agency. If you got, from a different scuba training agency and you'd like to, hey, I'd like to have this more complete set of skills, we'll have a bridging module for you. You'll find a DAN instructor in your area. You'll complete the e-learning. You'll complete the in-person skills workshop. So it's going to be a little bit of review on some things, but you'll be learning those new skills with them. So you're adding to your already existing knowledge. And these bridging modules are coming in 2022. So with that, I'm going to ask, what questions do you folks have?
All right. Thanks, Jim.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. So yeah, as Jim said, we invite you to questions in the chat, and while folks have gotten prior to the event, I'll pass those.
Okay.
One that came in earlier was, do courses meet all the criteria for the various agencies?
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you. Great question. All the DAN first aid courses meet or exceed the guidelines set out by ILCOR, American Heart Association, and so on. We did that on purpose so they would be recognized across a wide variety of platforms. That said, some workplaces may say they only want agency X's certification. That's up to them, and that's at their discretion. But our courses do meet that criteria, and in many cases exceed it.
Great. And are these courses limited to divers?
Another great question. While our courses are diving centric and use a lot of diving scenarios within the training examples, these are skills that are applicable to anybody and can be taken by non-divers and be used outside of diving, except for, of course, the oxygen skills.
All right, and a question in the chat. Are any DAN courses?
That's another great question. And we actually don't offer courses here at DAN headquarters other than for our own internal staff and when we get our summer interns come in. Because we don't want to be taking away business from the DAN instructors that are actually out in the field. That's not our role. So our role is to train the people in-house that want to be trained and our interns.
All right, another question from the chat. Does the PRO program?
Another great question. So for healthcare providers, what they're looking for is pulse checks and that 2 rescuer CPR. Okay. And our courses do include those for that specific reason.
Great. Finally, we had you addressed this pretty well in the presentation, but one of the people who emailed in ahead of time was wondering about finding an instructor. I think we've got the link to that.
Yep, absolutely. So another great question. So you can go to our website. You'll hover over that education at our website at dan.org. You'll find the education and events. You'll hover your mouse over that, and you'll you'll see that education events and that the icon for find a DAN instructor, and that takes you right to the locator. Again, you can search by zip code and by search radius, up to a 200-mile radius from your zip code.
Yeah, and we saw show that slide again. How does that go in the steps?
Absolutely.
Oh.
How do you become a DAN instructor? So again, just as a quick review, you've got to be a DAN member and a DAN professional, which means you're an active scuba diving leader, like a dive master, assistant instructor, or so on. And then you're going to find an instructor trainer near you. You're going to complete the required e-learning and then go through the instructor qualification course.
That looks like all the questions we have. Anybody else? We'll give another minute. And say thank you all for joining us.
And if you have any other questions or comments that you didn't get answered here, feel free to email us at oxygen@dan.org, or you can phone us at 919-684-2948 and select option 2, and that will get you to the safety services team, and either myself or Christine or Wally and perhaps Todd will be happy to answer your questions. So with that, I want to give another huge shout out to our members that are tuning in. Without the members, we couldn't be sitting here doing this. And another huge shout out to Kyle, who is back behind the scenes pushing buttons and turning dials and making us look good. So again, thank you all for your support, and thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Brian.
All right, thank you, Jim, and thanks to all our members. Good night.